All right, welcome to America This Week Live. I'm Matt Taibbi.
And I'm Walter Kern.
Walter, how many adults would you say what percentage of adults would you say are aware that every time they eat, there is somebody in the world who would like to eat but can't?
And it's not that we're taking their food away. It's just that we're ignoring their plight, I guess, right?
It could be both. I mean, you can look at it either way, but I'm just wondering how many people do you think are unaware that there are hungry? Yeah.
Well, I think zero.
Zero.
I was raised to be aware of the people who didn't have as much food as I did and couldn't afford to leave it on the plate. It was the 70s, and so they were the people in Bangladesh at the time. But I don't know that there's ever been a moment where I've thought that every time I put food in my mouth, the whole rest of the world is also doing it.
Just satiated, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Thanksgiving craziness in media has gone to some pretty weird places. It got pretty weird in 2020. I mean, I think I would have thought that was the peak. But we've gone to whole new levels this week. And there's just a slew of stories that explain all the different ways that we should not enjoy our coming 5 days off. And not only should we not enjoy it, but we should actually actively be miserable for as long as possible. So,
well, the inversion of Thanksgiving has been going on for years, Matt, because it was I who suggested we do this, because I've actually written in the past about the ways that they try every year or two to ruin it. And it was ruined during COVID because we were supposed to reject our relatives on the basis of whether or not they wore masks, were vaccinated, were in general just infectious people, or did not buy into pandemic panic. Ever since Trump has come along, there's been a question as to whether we should even invite or receive accept invitations from people who voted for him or even have something nice to say about him. Now they're getting down to the nitty gritty, and it's a question of whether we should eat at all, not just whether we should invite people or, go our own way or hold our tongues. But now a Thanksgiving fast is really the only way to react appropriately, according to certain.
I'm not sure that it's not better than that. So NPR has come out with what I think is a masterpiece. It's called How Hunger and Food Insecurity Affect Individuals and Whole Societies. And we start with the premise that people are hungry. And let's just listen to the first minute 10 or so of this. And that'll give you the overall, the general flavor of what you think is coming, but there is a plot twist after this.
I haven't seen this, so I'm in suspense. I just saw the headline and figured it would be like this.
It's brilliant.
Okay.
This message comes from WaterAid.
Listening to Shortwave from NPR. Earlier this month, the government shutdown led to a 2-week pause in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, putting 42 million people in the U.S. at further risk of food insecurity.
Many Americans are one check away, potentially, from experiencing some level of poverty.
Out of every 8 homes, including yours, one of those households isn't always sure when their next meal will come.
I think many times we think about people and, it's like, oh, that'll never be me.
That's nutritional scientist Angela Odoms-Young from Cornell University. And she says food insecurity can push a lot of families to make less healthy choices.
When the food is available, people eat. But when food is not available, they have to make different choices.
Okay, so that's why they buy Doritos and Dr. Pepper, because they're insecure. It's strange. When you're actually starving, what you go for are, Frito-Lay products and PepsiCo products. It's
But that's not their fault though. That's because the healthy products are not available, and the products that remain on the shelves and don't go bad
I
are
see.
the ones that are there. And incidentally, that's a problem that's not going to change when we move to community health stores.
I'm right now in Las Vegas, which I would say is America's capital of unhealthy eating.
Mhm.
I'll just assert that and ask to be challenged. And there aren't really even grocery stores for people like me. They're very far away. So I consider myself in a food desert. It's still not the case that I'm gorging on Funyuns just because they keep. Beef jerky also keeps. Rice keeps forever. I have bags of it from the last apocalypse that I'm still waiting to use. But the premise is that there are only Doritos left for some people, I guess.
Yes. Okay. But you think you've gotten to the end of what this story is about,
And this is just liftoff.
This is just liftoff because, yes, we've introduced the idea that other people are hungry, and that food insecurity can also include not having the proper kind of food.
Because
Well-
because they're addressing what came out during the SNAP scare, which were pictures of people with giant grocery carts filled to the brim with Fruit Loops. And so they're sort of getting rid of that objection or critique in advance.
There's another one they get rid of later through a very funny way, but we also have to address the question, Walter, of people who may not remember that hunger is a bad thing. So if we keep rolling, they're going to reintroduce the concept of hunger with theme music, after which they tell us that it has a negative effect on our bodies. So
Let's hear it.
Education program, she knows that might mean less nutrition and reaching for highly processed foods that are cheap and shelf stable instead of fresh fruit and vegetables that could go to waste. And with food insecurity often comes hunger. Hunger serves the essential purpose of getting us energy. And when we can't alleviate that hunger, dietitian Shauna Spence says our whole body reacts.
Whenever we're thinking of our bodies, we have to think of it as a machine.
Okay.
And whenever you think of a machine, you think of quote unquote feeding it, right? Oil, right?
Quote,
the
unquote.
maintenance that goes into it. And when you don't do those things, it stops working, it breaks down. And unfortunately, our bodies are the same way.
From trouble focusing and impacting your mental health to longer-term issues like chronic disease and social isolation, hunger has a huge impact on individual people and whole societies.
Whoa.
That's why Angela says it's a fallacy to think that just because you don't face food insecurity now, you won't feel its impacts later.
Okay, all right.
Today,
Well, you're saying no. Wait. Are they saying that I might face food insecurity later, or I might face the
Oh, that comes up a lot in the story. Yes.
You mean
You-
just because I'm full now doesn't mean I won't be hungry later?
Just because you've got a big ass plate of food in front of you this Thanksgiving, this Thursday, doesn't
let's
mean.
remember the SNAP program didn't run out. That was a false alarm. Everybody moved heaven and earth to make sure it didn't. I would guess that everybody's okay, but it could have happened. So this is sort of a parallel universe or multiverse idea.
But I love the fact that hunger,
Right.
right? So the
And quote unquote, you feed yourself with food, quote unquote.
quote unquote, you feed yourself, and then we bring on the Valley Girl voice who
Okay,
says
let's hear it.
our bodies are we heard it already.
That's
our
how.
bodies,
Right. And
our
we had a
bodies are like
Cornell expert.
machines, and it's like if you think of your bodies as like putting oil or gas in it, and
Really?
if you don't feed the machine doesn't work. And then from from there,
So NPR is supposed to broadcast to America's educated people, or
Right.
at least it claims that its demographic represents the kind of thinking class. It's interesting that they've forgotten these things already and need Cornell to remind them, but so be it.
so so then we go from
But how is this all supposed to make us feel bad on Thursday? That's what I want to know.
Well, because Walter, if you don't feel bad, you might forget. Let's see, what are the effects again? The effects are
Well, it affects the body. It affects whole societies. She hadn't quite specified how, but
from trouble focusing and impacting your mental health to long-term issue. I love this redundancy, to long-term issues like chronic disease. And social isolation. Hunger
hasn't
doesn't
RFK already gone through this and been, anathematized and demonized for saying, something like these things, only in a
yes,
far
but
more
he said it at the
adult way.
wrong time and for the wrong reasons.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So you start off with 1 in 8 people are food insecure. And by the way, if somebody could find the definition,
Is
of
that a
food
word
insecurity.
for hunger? No, hunger comes after it.
Yes.
Food insecure just means you're worried.
Yeah,
Hunger comes when you're worried
it's some kind of
about food.
social definition that has to do with how far away you are from not being able to have a meal or something like that. And look, I would greenlight this story any other time of the year, but
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I don't think people need to be reminded that food, quote unquote, feeds people and is like fuel. And there are certain people in the world who don't have it because they haven't even demonstrated yet that in America, they haven't used a statistic. SNAP didn't in fact run out. So where are they getting the notion that Americans are starving?
Well, I mean, they've done some kind of study. Food insecurity reports of multiple indications of disrupted eating pattern and reduced food intake. I mean, I don't doubt that there is a significant percentage of people in this country that that doesn't eat as much as they want and what they want. But
most of them, strangely, are kids because their parents, either aren't home or maybe during the pandemic, of course, they didn't get school lunch. They didn't get school breakfast, which many people here in Las Vegas, where I am now, rely on. But that wasn't as big a problem back then as COVID. Okay, well, they're being inconsistent, but let's hear the end. Is there more?
Well, there is more, but just quickly, just remember we've gone from 1 in 8 people is food insecure. That means there is a risk of them being hungry. Hunger is bad because you are like a machine that needs oil. And if you don't get your oil, you may have chronic disease and social isolation.
Right. Seems like a lot of people are getting chronic disease anyway, called diabetes, which actually has come from the opposite of hunger, strangely, especially the type 2.
So we address that later. So let's just roll it if we could at about the 8:15 mark. It's a little bit. It's significantly
How long
later.
does this damn thing go on?
It goes on for 12 minutes. It's amazing. The whole thing is just repeats that other people are hungry, and it's fucking sucks, and just goes through all the different ways that it sucks.
What does that picture show? Somebody using a calculator while looking at apples?
Yeah, I guess they're calculating how many calories
they're going like,
eat.
How many days can I live on the calories in these apples? And what, potato slices? What are those things next to the apples? What,
I don't know.
Dude, what does this illustrate? Have you ever sat at the table with your calculator going like, I know how much I make. I know how much I pay in rent.
It's clip art,
how
right?
many apples can I buy?
So they're like, I don't know. They probably ran a search for food, and that's what came up. And
they probably had AI say, "I want a calculator and an apple and a person."
Oh, it could be that too. Yeah.
Okay, but
all right. Well, let's roll a little bit more.
and PTSD are all linked with loneliness. And you may have heard us say before, the United States is in the midst of a loneliness epidemic. Angela says food scarcity can be another layer.
Food anxiety. So we think about what happens with the stress process and cortisol and other things that when people are trying to
Cortisol.
make ends meet, the household stress that goes along with that, potentially the social isolation that goes along with that.
So are they
Social
stop.
isolation was deemed one of the
Why did they bring on a conspicuously black person? I'm sorry, they did it, not me. Why is this a
Well,
racial?
I mean, no. This is a New York State official, if I'm not mistaken. So,
but they work in the world of radio. They're very conscious of what their voices and what the soundscape of their pieces projects. So I'm saying that they're aligning this subtly with racism. Sorry.
yeah. Well, they're getting to an even more fulsome comment along those
Okay.
lines in a moment.
one of the most significant public health issues in the US.
I don't know about you, but until this episode, I had not fully considered the extent to which my social life is centered around food.
Whoa.
But when I want to catch up with a friend, we go out for a meal. I want to
Oh my
celebrate my
God.
kid's birthday. I throw a party for
I
her
do
and her
that
friends
too.
and grill in the backyard. I sometimes go to happy hour with coworkers. I treat myself to a fancy meal out with my partner when I've had a rough week. None of that can happen if I can't afford my next meal.
Okay, stop.
And Shauna says the trauma of food insecurity.
Wait a second.
Okay.
You can't go out to eat if you can't afford food. And not only that, you can't really have an emotional or a social life at all unless you eat with others.
Right. So
That's
so,
why people go to restaurants. I always wondered, dude. Do you ever wonder why people dress up and pay extra and go to restaurants with other people? It's an emotional outlet, and it soothes loneliness. Did you realize that? And people who can't eat, who don't have food, can't do that. They sit alone, starving in their apartments,
I mean,
while
like,
you have a happy birthday party where they sing it and bring sparkling cake. How dare you?
again, the fact that this has to be reported, it's very much like the hunger is bad news.
But dude, the NPR reporter avowed that she had never even thought of this until now.
Yes, I never thought until now. Well, no, what she said is that she didn't realize how much of her social life revolved around food. But then she proceeded to the breaking news that you can't throw a birthday party for your kids, have a barbecue in your backyard, go to happy hour with your friends, or go to a special date night meal at a fancy restaurant with your partner, and unless you can afford all those things, which is something I guess has never occurred to other people. I mean,
You know what? She should
you
turn to
you
the-
have to report this? Are you
They should have
kidding?
they should have a pastor from a mega church on, because I assure you that this morning I passed about 5 of them that are having Thanksgiving meals for the lonely, friendless, and homeless. Someone is actually doing something about this, lady. And just because they don't listen to NPR and believe in Jesus doesn't mean you shouldn't maybe talk to them.
I'm sorry. I'm already I'm a Zionist creep already for this topic.
Because we're talking about this.
Because we're talking about this. So okay, let's keep listening because it gets even funnier.
As the trauma of food insecurity in childhood can lead to eating disorders later in life. That even when presented with healthy options in adulthood, that unhealthy relationship with food can carry over.
They can still choose to maybe hold out on meals because of that trauma from childhood. They don't feel comfortable eating fully
People
from
starve
childhood.
themselves when they
Anorexia,
finally get the money to
binging,
buy food.
Overeating because you couldn't before. Shauna says the size of somebody's body does not tell the whole story.
Malnourishment doesn't have, I should say, a look. This happened when I used to work in clinical. We get people, in larger bodies, and they would be malnourished, but they don't have that gaunt look in their face. They don't have, the withering body, and they're dismissed. However, they're not,
As what?
their bodies are still deteriorating, believe it or not, because they're not getting access to those macronutrients like good source of protein, good
Okay,
source.
stop. We can stop. So,
So fat
uh,
people are starving.
if you don't have that gaunt face,
Mhm.
that if you pass someone and you don't see that gaunt face, that doesn't mean you shouldn't still be feeling guilty
Right.
about all that shit you're about to eat.
Because I've actually been on the Upper East Side of New York, where it's the opposite, where a lot of the stockbrokers and wealthy of New York are very thin. They do have the gaunt look, in fact, but they eat only caviar, and so it is. You shouldn't judge by the body. That's true. I never think about it though when I see somebody go by, three. So I'm in Las Vegas. Right down the block from me is a place, I forget what it's called, but if you're over 300 pounds, they weigh you at the door, you eat free. Okay. I don't know what it's called, but you get more to eat the bigger you are. Because the bigger you are, the more, I don't know, possible it is that you're starving. So some people may actually be unable to get up. They're starving so badly, and they have to be lifted by forklifts. While thin people may be heavily and densely nourished in ways that don't show in their hollow eyes and bony shoulders. Did
So-
you know that?
No, I guess I'm learning that for the first time now. That I can draw the wrong impression about
Right.
whether or not a person has access to food by observing largeness
Well, when she worked in clinical, quote unquote,
in clinical.
in
yeah.
clinical, she learned
Yeah.
that, and she saw that people coming in who, with nacho cheese dripping from their chins, from their double chins, weren't necessarily doing all that well. And I see that too a lot, even though I don't work in clinical and haven't gone to Cornell. So what are we supposed to do about it all? I mean, I know I can feel bad, but that's not enough somehow, is it?
So we're not feeling badly enough yet, and so the sister station PBS, right, or the sister organization PBS, took a couple of good whacks at making sure we had proper Thanksgiving attitudes.
Well, because there's a whole other reason to hate Thanksgiving.
Well, there's myriad reasons to hate Thanksgiving.
Right.
We have one story that came out. A historian explains how the Pilgrims took over Thanksgiving and who has been erased. And it's a reprint of a story from The Conversation. And
Who has been erased?
well,
Who hasn't been, I guess, is the
everybody
question these days,
basically. The Wampanoag, Native Americans, Catholics, Jews.
Matt, did you know? Guess what?
Mhm.
That there were no pilgrims at the first Thanksgiving because it happened long after the pilgrims were gone. Did it not happen after the Civil War? In fact,
No. No.
when was
no.
Thanksgiving declared a national holiday?
Oh,
Produced?
Thanksgiving? I don't know, but the original, the feast it's based on is based on an actual event. It's funny, they actually get it right in the Charlie Brown Christmas special. It's the one about where there are 90 Wampanoag who show up.
No, it
and
says right here. It was only around the turn of the 20th century that most people in the U.S. came to associate Thanksgiving with Plymouth pilgrims, quote unquote, and generic, quote unquote, Indians sharing
Right.
a historic meal. So the mythical, hands across the water, shared meal that we celebrate in America's Montessori's and preschools with cardboard hats only got going in the 20th century. It wasn't the Pilgrims who took it over, by the way. It was the idea of the Pilgrims. They were all dead by the 20th century, as I remember.
Oh, yes. Yeah. They were pretty much all dead. Look, they survived in some peculiarly obnoxious New Englanders, with
Dude,
whom
dude,
mhm.
it wasn't just the Indians. I'm reading. You know who else has been excluded from the Thanksgiving idea?
Who?
Catholics and Jews.
Catholics, yes,
And
yes,
Jews.
and Jews, yes.
Because there were no actual Catholics among the Pilgrims, because the Pilgrims were extreme Protestants. And
So
there may have been Jews, but they weren't identifying as such.
So they're going to show us how we've all individually got it wrong by showing us a painting. Um,
It's not by
now,
the fascist painter Norman Rockwell, is it?
no,
Okay.
it's not the Jean-Léon Jerome Ferris painting, The First Thanksgiving,
Right.
that pretty much everybody's seen, that was hanging in every school, but it's one like it. It's Jenny Augusta Brownscomb's The First Thanksgiving at Plymouth, and they show that painting, and we learn that underneath it, that both images distort the historical context and misrepresent indigenous attendees from the nearby Wampanoag Confederacy. The
Did
native
NPR have reporters there?
No, but if you this came up in the whole question of like why Massachusetts is getting rid of its flag, because the Native American gentleman who used to be at the center of the flag was wearing a headdress which was based on a carving of a Plains Indian, and not a Wampanoag, because they didn't wear them. So here it says that not only are there too few Indigenous attendees, here's
So actually, there were more.
Yes.
Score one for the Pilgrims. They actually invited more Indigenous people than are represented here.
Yes.
They allowed themselves to be outnumbered by people who they were killing. Interesting.
And if you learn this from Linus and not from this painting,
Right.
as
A
most
painting I've never seen before, but
yeah, right, yeah, exactly. If you learned the history from this painting, which looks like another painting that is more accurate, that's the sense of this article. You will learn that you will see that there are too few Indigenous attendees, but then you go farther down, and there's an even bigger offense. Ferris's painting also implies that the English provided the food. Plymouth residents brought fowl, as Pilgrim Edward Winslow recalled, probably wild turkey, but the Wampanoag added 5 killed deer. Do you see deer on that table, Walter? It's an outrage. There's a lack of deer.
Somebody also brought oysters, as I remember. There were a lot of oysters, and we don't have enough of them. But so what they're saying is that the contribution of the Indians was minimized because they brought deer, but
Right.
the fowl were painted. Was this painter aware of this, or is this just an innocent mistake, or are they a propagandist who is trying to suppress the level of venison consumed?
So this is a 1915 painting,
Right.
so this is as you point out, after the false resurrection of the Pilgrim myth.
So NPR is saying we should eat more venison at Thanksgiving. I'll go
I
with
guess, yeah. So let's have some more venison, but then we get to the real problem. The image's cheerful scene also obscures how death had destabilized the area. The Pilgrims lost almost half their group to famine or exposure that first winter. After earlier European contact, however, even larger numbers of the Wampanoag had died in a regional epidemic that raged between 1616 and 1619. That's why
now they're making this painter feel guilty for depicting living people,
because
there were so many more dead at the time, but they're left out of the picture. Do you see any corpses in that painting?
There are no corpses, and
no deer, no corpses, too few Indians.
Not just the Indians that we that we suppressed and abused and massacred, but the Pilgrims too, they died off in huge numbers. And it's true, they survived to build the greatest military empire in history.
They
But
did survive to do that later, but at the time, let's be clear,
at the time, it was
they
a
were
bummer.
living in a tiny clearing at the edge of a continent with really bad weather, barely eating. You want to talk about food insecurity? Let's talk Pilgrims. You know, they may have triumphed over it by the time of this painting depicts, but they had some food insecurity. In fact, some starved. But behind them was a giant continent, which had yet to be conquered at all. So at this poignant moment, when most of them were dead on both sides, apparently, from famine or not famine, plague or, disease, they gathered with deer and fowl, and NPR still has a fucking problem with it.
Well, that's because we're not celebrating correctly. And that leads us to the other story, which is titled Native American Tribes Arrive in Plymouth to Mourn on Thanksgiving. And
right now they're doing that?
Yes. And so there is a member of the Aquinnah-Wampanoag and the Oglala Lakota tribes.
Who are Plains Indians, by the way. Lakota is a Plains Indian. I grew up around that area of America. What are they doing there? They weren't there.
Well,
why are they objecting? The whole problem is that they were depicted as being there a minute ago when they weren't, and now they're showing up to object.
Well, because look, the white people arrived like a plague, and they wiped out all the Indians, and and it kind of sucked for them. I'm not going to dispute that, but
Matt, I'm going to dispute it. I'm going to dispute it. The Lakota at the time of Thanksgiving, as NPR properly pointed out, were not wearing headdresses and running up and down the East Coast. They were out on the plains in, living the life of buffalo hunters. As yet, they had not met the white man mostly. And whatever was to come has nothing to do with Thanksgiving. Believe me, the Pilgrims weren't saying, I hear there is a world of buffalo out there and, buffalo-skinned lodgings. As soon as we can get a foothold here, let's go out and kill them. Like, in other words, I'm sorry, they just deplored historical inaccuracy, but they just celebrated historical, not inaccuracy, but kind of vengeance over those who had not yet been touched. I guess this was it's hard to say when the original sin happened. If it was Columbus or the Pilgrims or Davy Crockett pushing a little west of, the Cumberland Gap or Daniel Boone, it's hard to say, but I feel bad about it all. So,
this is how we're supposed to think of it this weekend. And here's a quote from one of the visiting Indians. To us, Thanksgiving is a day of mourning because we remember the millions of our ancestors who were murdered by uninvited European colonists such as the Pilgrims. Today, we and many indigenous people around the country say, no thanks, no giving. So, but
you want to know what? A lot of people, I can tell you this for a fact, because I happen to have a lot of friends who are Native. I do. It's unbelievable that they would tolerate me. In fact, I just finished writing a book about my Native friends a week ago, set on a lot of their lands. And you know what a lot of them like? Thanksgiving. I'm just saying it's underrepresented in this story. But if I drive east of here to meet my friends on the Hopi Reservation or the Navajo Reservation or the Hickory Apache Reservation, there will be Thanksgiving. There will be.
Yeah,
not that NPR realizes. I have a friend we both know who was in the U.S. Army and he was married to a Native woman and so on. And he was just at the University of Virginia studying, getting his master's degree in literature. And he says, Walter, it's wild. Now he's out in Salt Lake City getting his PhD. He said, Walter, it's wild. My friends out east think all the Indians are dead.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I know. I know. Yeah. I mean, that's like I
And
was
they
in.
think they're dead because of stories like this.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a Swiss friend I went to college with in Russia who, when we had Thanksgiving, he said, "Oh, that's the one where you killed all the Indians, right?" And I
You
said,
see,
"Well, sort of, yeah."
exactly. NPR isn't telling us anything new. I mean, we've been feeling bad about Thanksgiving since the beginning in America, so much that
Right.
even Russians know how bad we feel about it.
Right. And look, we had a listener who was talking about how out of touch we are because
With what?
her kids get money from get food from a charity. We're not saying people aren't hungry. As I said,
guess you probably,
I would have agreed. I would have greenlit the hunger story. But when you do it a few days before Thanksgiving, you're saying something very specific. You're saying,
oh, Matt, that's a troll. I'm tired of this bullshit.
no,
You know what I
look,
mean?
I'm tired. I'm tired of it too.
Listen,
Um,
listen, send in your bona fides to me and I will personally help you because that's how nice a guy I am. In fact, I give to these organizations all the time, but I will not be told that, somehow I'm out of touch. You're out of touch. You have a computer and you're watching a subscription. Well, it's not a subscription podcast.
not this. Not
We
this
do this
one.
one free.
Mm-hmm. But
Oh, come on. Give me a break.
yeah.
You spelled his name wrong.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's a Malcolm Gladwell tactic. But look, the only possible and there's just avalanches of this stuff. I mean, we could go on with this. There's story after story about the hunger, about the colonialism, and
Right.
there are some new.
The exclusion of Jews and Catholics. You forgot that part.
Yes, I know, but these stories were shaded a certain way in 2020. They're being shaded a slightly different way this year.
Okay, so here we're getting down to it.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to so many Americans? Because I just put in Thanksgiving in the name of various publications this morning, and I
Mhm.
got feel bad Thanksgiving stories from many of them. Some of them were from this year, but if you go back to 2016, it was pages. What is it about a certain kind of person in America that can't stand Thanksgiving? And why do they feel every year that rather than letting people feel grateful, they should feel terrible? In fact, they should feel guilty. In fact, they should feel angry in self-hatred, really. I mean, why is that? What is that op about? What is the appetite? I'll tell you why. They don't want us. They don't like peace. They don't like people sitting down together. Thanksgiving is the most humane of our holidays. It probably is the best of our holidays when well celebrated. I in my little town, people go from their own Thanksgiving to a big civic center where they feed everybody who wants for free. And churches do that.
Hell, even the drug dealers give turkeys away.
People who find a tourist or somebody drifting through town who doesn't have friends say, come on over to my house. Thanksgiving represents hospitality, peace, transcending materialism, sharing, understanding, family, friendship, community. It's the very best of our it's not a gorging, materialistic, present and gift-based holiday. It's not a patriotic, let's shoot off fireworks that look like bombs and celebrate victory in war holiday. It's not a holiday that celebrates a personage, a famous personage, a powerful president, or something like that. It's not
even supernatural and religious.
It's not even supernatural and religious, unless you want to make it that way. I've spent Thanksgiving at people's houses of every description. I've been the loner guy who was from out of town in Chicago teaching at a university and didn't know anybody, who gets taken in for a Thanksgiving. I've been taken in by families of all kinds on Thanksgiving in my travels. It is unity, peace, love, friendship, and simplicity. And the reason that we have this meal that we've kind of standardized is because it's the one day where we all kind of do the same thing.
Right.
The rich
And
man eats a turkey and the poor man eats a turkey. And if you buy enough, like stamps and free stamps at my grocery store back in Montana, you get a free turkey. In fact, most normal people who want a free turkey can find one somewhere.
yeah.
So why do we take the one fucking thing that we do right and
Well,
destroy it?
yeah, and I would also argue that in our past, because this holiday, part of the concept of this holiday is that the entire family gets together. It's a big table. Everybody who is part of the family comes. People who don't have family are invited, right? We go out of our way to invite them. I remember being overseas. I was overseas for a long time, and Americans overseas basically suck and break rules and abuse the local population. But on Thanksgiving, they behave pretty nicely, right? They always invite people who are left out and don't have a place to go. There's always some of those folks at Thanksgiving dinner. But an unspoken part of the Thanksgiving ritual is that we're supposed to kind of keep the divisive topics to a minimum over dinner, like the arguing and screaming at each other element of this. There's always one relative who breaks the rules. I understand that, but
that's another recent fixation. I can tell you, in the 70s when I was a kid, there was none of this.
yeah, that's true.
Thanksgiving
I don't remember any of that. Yeah,
is a very perilous. First, they tell us we're supposed to talk about politics, and then they tell us we're not. Or whatever. But in 1970s Minnesota, let me tell you a fairy story from the American past. We didn't think of Thanksgiving, strangely, as a historically accurate representation of the Pilgrims. We thought of it as an aspirational holiday in which we were a little better than we were the rest of the year, and a little more grateful, because most Americans aren't very. Though I shouldn't even say that. We want to be especially grateful. For many, it was the only time they said grace all year and actually thanked the creator, whoever it is, for the food they eat. The rest of the time, they just pile it down. We watched the Detroit Lions on TV because
right. And by the way, that used to be a quasi-Catholic kind of ritual because it was so painful to watch them before they were good. But go ahead. Yeah.
We got up early to watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in small town Minnesota. Oh my God, Underdog, Mickey Mouse, the big balloons going down the canyons of the city that we didn't even know in small town Minnesota we'd ever actually visit in real life. It had a feeling that was not magical like Christmas, I'm going to get something, but a mixture of peaceful, solemn, exciting to children. And I'm going to say another, and chill. It's the only holiday on which you're expected to nap and crash out in the middle of the holiday.
Right.
It's the only holiday that's over before it even gets dark, and finally, it's very exciting to children, because you know what children get to see on Thanksgiving? Their families. They get to see their support system. They get to see even their divorced parents stopping by to see each other.
Yes, I contest that is the case.
Yes,
they do interact on that day.
For the kids, but
sometimes more and sometimes less successfully. But yes,
but the idea that it's supposed to be some realistic play, including a lot of venison and people. Because if all those people were dead of the plague by Thanksgiving, there were probably some people at Thanksgiving who were sick with the plague and going to die within the next week.
Right.
So coughing people, eating venison, mourning their relatives in a clearing, where they were all very uncomfortable would be the accurate way, I suppose, to celebrate. But we've chosen to make a little bit of a myth out of it.
But
Well,
I'm
shame
just
on us.
I'm at a loss as to what this approach to covering the holiday is about. Are we supposed to start? I mean, are we really starting to think towards in this sort of year zero direction of just postmodern?
Yes.
Let's wipe out everything and start over with some other better idea. That's where we're at, I guess.
What is the holiday that NPR approves of? Halloween?
Kwanzaa.
Is that the only one? Any of them?
Of the old ones?
Well, yes, of the ones that we had, until 2010, say.
Yeah, Mardi Gras, maybe. I don't know.
Mardi Gras. No, all I'm saying is this is a kind of mythocide. It's different than genocide. It's taking every myth, every ritual, I don't want to be like Bill O'Reilly talking about the war on Christmas or something, but hey, spare it for the kids. Shut up. Let the 7-year-olds have their divorced parents meet. Let the uncle come over. Let Bobby fall asleep on the couch in front of the Detroit Lions, snoring with his drink. Let the cousins run into the basement and play and dance around. Leave us alone. You're ruining everything in the name of a world that I can't even envision. Because if we clear away Thanksgiving and we get rid of Christmas and we stop the 4th of July and we have no President's Day or Columbus Day or anything else, what will we replace them with? NPR Day?
Well, right. I guess the implication is that we're going to remake things.
Into what god awful monstrous hybrid of feeling bad. This is the socialist holiday, socialists.
Do
you know what the Pilgrims were? I'm going to tell you, Matt. Socialists. Let's get a little bit real about what it was like to be a pilgrim. You all pitched in and went on the same ship. You didn't have a huge hierarchy. You didn't have some people in Plymouth living up on the heights and some people living down in the swamp. The Pilgrims were share and share alike, religious, utopian people. You know what the actual Pilgrims and their descendants did in America? Ended
Dunking
slavery.
chair. Yeah.
Ended slavery.
Oh,
They
well,
did.
yes. Yeah.
They became the abolitionists. They became the people who fund NPR, to be honest.
Yeah.
They started our universities, etc. All the conscience that you can fit into a radio speaker on NPR comes, strangely, from the bloodlines of the Pilgrims. How do I know?
The issue that I have with all this is that they present all of this as this litany of unbroken horrors, and they always leave out the minor subplot that this was all leading to a first in history revolution against monarchy that stuck and was based on a legalistic justice system that was flawed but fixable, right? I mean, it was an enormous leap forward for humanity in general. Of course, it wasn't perfect, but it did a lot of wonderful things. And
I just changed yesterday. I don't know. Anybody who's following me on Twitter knows that I changed. Something happened to me over the weekend. Somebody was asking me to have an adult, sort of thoughtful, historically sensitive opinion about Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens. And I thought, you know what? I'm not playing the game anymore. They're stupid. I don't have to entertain all of the worries and anxieties and objections that people are foisting on me anymore. I can just continually mock and ignore people like NPR. I know it's fun to argue with them, but it's a waste of time. They're all the same. we don't have satire anymore, so you and I are actually forced to take them seriously because they're not, endlessly, ruthlessly ridiculed on places like, Saturday Night Live and so on. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of their stupid arguments. I'm tired of them being surprised that feeding the body actually is a lot like putting gas in a car. I'm tired of their discoveries that aren't new discoveries of all the things we should feel bad about that I already felt bad about when I was 6. I was already told people were starving when I was a 6-year-old.
Yeah. I think we got that part. Like even before we get
Can
to
we move on?
Yeah. So yeah, it's just part of this ongoing op to make us feel like crap about everything, and
all it's doing is making me feel better, and all it's doing is actually making me the opposite. I'm going from being defensive to aggressive, and this is a serious point. I'm starting to understand why we have all these provocateurs in social media saying outrageous things, because in a strange way, they're saying them because they still can. And because it's so oppressive, so overly policed, such a world of nitwits talking in NPR voices, bumming you out about eating food.
Right.
And at a certain point, the human spirit
12 minutes.
The human spirit has to stand up for itself and say, you know what? It's fucking hard. I've got a kidney stone. My wife's got cancer. I'm trying to save my money so I can put my kids through college. Let me have a good time, you freaking
right. For
ghouls.
5, I'm having it's a few days off. Like let it ride, and they can't, right? And okay, and part of that is the media's fault. They're insistent on this. Part of this is a real political thing, right? So we went through last week how Alyssa Slotkin and Mark Kelly put out a very provocative video urging people to refuse to obey illegal orders,
whatever they were, unspecified illegal orders,
yeah,
which they have yet to specify, by the way.
Right. So there's a little bit of doubling down, and Donald Trump responded in a way that I thought was over the top by talking about how it was sedition punishable by death. Like a
lot of military officers agree with him, by the way, Matt.
I get that, but and I get that that's very Trump, but there was another way to handle it. Anyway, let's look at SOT 3.
What was it?
I mean, well,
to not assert that he controlled.
If he had done it a different way, it wouldn't have been Trump. So it's not even worth getting to. So this is Morning Joe with Mark Kelly. So this is this is the beginning of the tableau. Well, not the beginning, but this is sort of the back and forth after what we talked about.
Yeah, they would be violating their oath if they followed illegal orders.
And I guess, Senator, members of the military, what is your advice to them if they come across something that seems confusing?
I think they need to talk to their leadership, talk to their commanding officer about it and tell your commanding officer why you think this may be illegal. There are lawyers within the military, the Judge Advocate General Corps. You can have a conversation, with somebody who understands the law. There's always the option of you review the UCMJ with your leadership and you explain to somebody why you think this may not be lawful.
Okay, first of all, what do we think of the
He hasn't told anyone what an illegal order is. He hasn't. He's left it up to vibes and feelings about what may be. He has just sowed absolute confusion and dissension in the military. He had suggested to me that, how can I put this? The military is under the control of the individual conscience. And when confused, you may be when confused, you maybe not have to automatically follow those orders. In other words, he just slowed down military discipline to a crawl because everybody is thinking about things that they didn't think about before. Now, whether we have a military or not, maybe is a good question. But if we're going to, it might be nice to have a chain of command in which everybody isn't in a complete fog about whether or not they have to do things just because their senior officer told them to, or their commander.
And I'm not sure about the ethics of projecting that fog to other countries that are, but I guess we're in a space where, that's okay. So
I think Mark Kelly should specify what he believes these illegal orders to be, give cases of them, describe them both as they compare to historical illegal orders. In other words, have there been past times in America where this has happened? Or is he talking about Nazi Germany? He better clarify himself. Because if he doesn't clarify himself, and I'm going to just go out on a limb, he belongs in the brig. He belongs in the brig.
Well, the Department of War.
This is not funny. This is, as I went before, this is Civil War talk. This is Civil War adjacent talk. They are fomenting something, and they're doing it with people who are 19, 20, who don't understand, but have been thoroughly drilled that they don't have to. Listen, he wasn't the first to tell them that they don't need to follow legal orders. They're told that when they enter the military. They're told that all the time. And the officers certainly are told it. They all know it. His game is cute, but I think he hasn't been called out strongly enough, to be honest. I think it's shocking that he has fellow party members who are supporting this. I think it's shocking that NPR actually went out and did a story on National Guardsmen. I saw it this morning.
Yeah.
Who are confused about their orders.
Yeah, and they're having what is it? They're having chats. They used a very strange word to describe the chats they were having. The encrypted chats.
Right.
But yeah, go ahead.
And Matt, what were they doing? They were encouraging that. They were modeling, because a lot of reporting is actually suggesting. And the idea that you can have encrypted chats about your orders suddenly is one that probably hasn't struck a lot of people yet in the military, but they're kind of hoping it will. This is the beginning of a breakdown, and we're standing for it. And we're worried about whether or not the punishment for sedition is death. Well, it actually is. I mean, I didn't make that up. Is it not?
Yeah.
The question is whether this is sedition.
And this is the part where I get frustrated, because I feel like there are so many people involved in this little tableau who've never lived in a place where this kind of stuff happens and turns in a certain direction. Like most people enjoy stability enough, or they're glad enough for it. And while we're on the topic of Thanksgiving, being thankful that we don't have to get up in the morning and wonder who the president's going to be by nightfall, or whether how much you have to pay to get a judge to listen to your case, or any of a million things that happen in places where civilization is broken down. Whether you're going to have to pay a toll to somebody who doesn't actually belong to the government.
Your job is you fix helicopters for the U.S. Army or the National Guard. Okay.
Right.
And there's a helicopter that's about to take off, and it's going to do crowd control in the United States, or observe, I don't know, a riot or whatever it might do. Or it's going to go off into the Caribbean, or it's going to patrol the border. You're fixing that helicopter and you go, I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if it's illegal what we're doing. Maybe I won't connect this bolt to this part. That's the kind of thing that's going to start happening. And if you think I'm making it up, you're going to see news about it. You're going to see news about the conscientious private who Luigi'd out. And in the name of not following legal orders, he didn't do his job, resulting in this. Or he turned with his firearm and shot someone. Or he did whatever. And he will be celebrated on the one side and excoriated on the other. And through that crack, they will drive the wedge, the splitting maul that will take the American stump and put it in two pieces. They are trying to do it. They are nakedly hoping for the aftermath in which we are all confused. These are the same people who want us to feel bad about Thanksgiving, to connect it all up. They want us to feel bad about everything. And they're taking the last functioning, semi-functioning, well-disciplined American institution, which is the U.S. military, and they are trying to dissolve it into a puddle of uncertainty, confusion, backbiting, rebellion, and so on. And they are using the American media to do it. And the national media, like NPR, is playing along as though we have already split, as though the semi-official national radio stations and TV stations are already in rebellion against, because, they don't even really work for us anymore. They work for the Ford Foundation. They work for the Pew Charitable Trust. They work for these massive capital pools that come from some of the greatest corporate raiders of all time, including Henry Ford, anti-Semite, and Hitler lover.
The military was the one place you could go and feel pretty sure that you wouldn't have to make any kind of political decision about anything in American society.
It's also the one place where, if you're poor, frankly, you can get a foothold. You can get an education. Right. The military is one of the great deals for those who don't have anything in America, and they're ruining it.
Yeah, and we've systematically gone through institutions and made it impossible for people to kind of stay out of politics. As we've talked about before, 15 years ago, Walter, if you had a byline in the New York Times, nobody knew who the hell that person was and what their private thoughts were about anything. And then they were told to start tweeting, for PR reasons, not for political reasons, for PR reasons, for traffic reasons. And suddenly everybody became a personality. And before you knew it, there was no, sort of objective news. Now we have these confusing messages, right? Like Terry Moran gets fired for tweeting, but he's tweeting the same stuff that the network reports on constantly. It's confusing. We have all the news institutions have been politicized hopelessly when they weren't before, and that's why nobody believes them.
As I don't need to point out, but as zillions of people have, all these people were ordered to get a COVID vaccine that they don't understand. In fact, they're ordered to get vaccines all the time. They were ordered to get vaccines in the Gulf War, which already legitimately have been revealed as deleterious to health. They go into weapons tests and burn pits and things like this, where they inhale odors and chemicals and so on that make them sick and result in giant class action suits. It's been going on forever. It's gone on through the Vietnam War. They are people in the military who, in some ways, have been endlessly abused by their officers. But I didn't see NPR talking about that. I didn't see them asking for people to resist getting vaccinated or resist, clearing out various places in Iraq that, were full of decommissioned weapons or taking the vaccines that I think have already damaged a lot of them. No, they waited until now. And why did they wait until now? Because now it has a political meaning to resist. And it's so obvious. It's so ridiculous. Here's why I'm so crazy right today. Here's why I'm a zero tolerance guy right now. I sat over the weekend with one of the best friends and the colleagues of Charlie Kirk, a guy about 39, 40 years old, who was there with him when his neck was blown out and large amounts of his blood left his body on TV for all Americans to see while he was speaking on a college campus. In the time since that's happened, I have had to deal with people who question whether he actually died, whether it was a stage show, whether his own security betrayed him, whether the state of Israel or some other nefarious group created a conspiracy that, basically was an insider plot. But I was looking in the eye of a guy whose best friend had died in front of his eyes. Things are serious in America. The social media layer and the media layer in general has a great ability to fog us up. We've already fogged over about Charlie Kirk. I've met his widow. I saw and was near her over the weekend. This is somebody who I've been told is everything from, Courtney Love somehow, implicated in the death of her husband, to, someone who entrapped him romantically. I've heard the worst things. This woman was bawling with her children. America, you are disgusting me, and you are shaming yourself by not looking it in the eye what you're becoming. You're becoming a country of assassinations, sedition, self-hatred authorized from the highest levels about your most humane and moments and your most peaceful rituals. Are we not to have a break this Thursday from assassination, rioting, illegal orders, fighting, people calling you a Zionist creep? We're not supposed to have timeout even for one day.
Well, because the timeout is an implicit endorsement of the status quo. Like I saw an academic paper talking about the issue of, what did they call it? The issue of staying neutral, and it was called "When Do We Care About Political Neutrality? The Hypocritical Nature of Reaction to Political Bias." And the theory of it was that people who complain about this kind of constant misery policing and politicizing of everything, well, their bias is in favor of normative structures, right? So
they're talking about me, in other words.
Yeah, anybody who people who complain about all this stuff, the reason they're complaining about political bias is because they don't want to hear about normative harming complaints or normative. What was the phrase that was so amazing? The in-group harming biased messages. So if we're in the in-group, we just don't want to hear in-group harming biased messages. So, and the in-group they're talking about is people who just want things to remain relatively stable or not, fully transformed in some way.
Into what? Into what?
I don't know. I don't know. This is the thing that drives me nuts, is that this perspective leaves out what happens when you eliminate a relatively stable system of government.
The happy camps in which we all wake up to the sound of Hillary Clinton announcing that Donald Trump is gone, as she, recently from a stage for all of America to hear, fantasized about? Is that what they want? Rather than Thanksgiving, what? We'll have Hillary Day, in which we celebrate the demise of the reactionary leaders, or will it be something else? Will there be, the day where we all beat ourselves over the heads with iron bars as penitents? Will there be like mass sacrifice day where we all watch the bad people being thrown into pits or off, the top of pyramids while drums are sounded? Will it be Lord of the Flies day? Because I'm getting we just finished Lord of the Flies. I'm getting a Lord of the Flies feeling about all of this. Like, all they have to really give me is savagery recast as non-normative something.
Right. Yeah.
I'm resisting savagery. Sorry. I'm resisting civil discontent and civil war. I'm resisting rebellion and mutiny in the military. I'm resisting, people hating each other constantly and screaming at each other. I'm for people sitting down at tables and eating. If they want to say grace, they can. If they don't, they don't have to. I'm resisting. You're damn right. A little normativity right now would go a long way. Because when I look out the window right next to me, across the street in downtown Las Vegas, there are people asleep in fentanyl comas, walking around, lighting fires on mattresses, like the one out back of my apartment building that was on fire, a couple months ago. I don't, if that's normativity, not liking that, or wanting another way or way out of it, and backwards or forwards or whichever way direction you want to go towards something a little more peaceful, a little more loving, a little more just, a little more interesting, a little freer, damn, sign me up. Because I'm getting sick of having to defend what I understand to be life and
Right.
civilization.
So Mark Kelly did that thing. Slotkin released that video, and then Trump had a tweet storm. We went over some of those last week. Let's look at the one from this Sunday. That's like number 7. If we got it. And what does it say? Many great legal scholars agree that the Democrat traitors have told me that the military military to disobey my orders as president and have committed a crime of serious proportion. The traitors, blah blah blah, that told the military to disobey my orders should be in jail right now, not roaming the fake news networks. Sedition is a major crime. There can be no other interpretation of what they said. Then Rand Paul responded to some of this. Let's listen to SOT 6.
Everybody knows that the president is famous for his unfiltered social media. But if you take at face value the idea that calling your opponents traitors and then specifically saying that it warrants the death penalty is reckless, inappropriate, irresponsible. There are a number of other ways to describe it, but it's not something that is helping the country heal wounds. I think it stirs things up, and really, I think we can do better.
How? I really want to know how. People keep saying there's an alternative to calling out people who you believe are being seditious. What is it? Quietly arresting them?
Yeah, I think what's left out of that is that you got to go also call out the other behavior, because once you do what Kelly and Slotkin did, as you pointed out, in a third world environment, that now forces the hand of your insecure dictator. And
they knew how Trump was going to respond. They baited him. There are 2 ways to respond to being baited. Don't be baited, or be ferocious.
Right.
Rise above, or pick up a sledgehammer and say, no, I'm not going to take it. When you get to prison, they say you've got to stay in the first day vigilant about any challenges. And
just punch the first person you see.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's how Trump is choosing to play it. And you know what? There's a thing called game theory, which governs the progress of conflicts and how things come out in the end based on your behavior and your early moves. And it is a rational early move to overreact when threatened. It's called tit for tat, and it's called, something bigger than tit for tat sometimes, like overwhelming force, threaten at the beginning. It's a lot easier because the longer the game goes on, the more complex it becomes, and the less any one move has particular force. So I hate to be this way. I'm too colorful sometimes in my language, but the pimp hand idea, which is that you deal with the first act of rebellion, especially harshly, and then you're gentle later, is at least as good an idea as to how to deal with perceived sedition as I'll just wait until it gets worse.
Yeah. At minimum, it's escalating in a way that it shouldn't, right?
Matt, if
No. I'm
if
just
a
saying.
quarterback said this about his coach, you would know that the team was going to hell.
Right, or he'd be cut the next day, right? Like that's the way it would work. So okay, so Trump said a whole bunch of stuff. He said a whole bunch of stuff about Rand Paul after that. So everybody's pissed off. Then we had this from Hillary Clinton. This is SOT 1.
You know what this reminds me of is I wish that there could be like a huge national sound system. And we would all wake up and they'd say, attention, attention, we have found the problem and we have solved it. He is gone.
Achtung, Achtung. Sort of like they had in the camps,
But
What? They can't get over how
But the
wonderful
reason
that
we're here
idea?
tonight is to remind all of us, including ourselves, that can't happen unless we make it happen. And
What does that mean? So Kelly's going to handle the military side of the rebellion, and she's going to handle the civilian side.
Yep.
That was a call to violence, Matt. I am so damn tired of pretending that I'm not seeing what I'm seeing in front of my eyes just because I'm a podcaster who's supposed to be fucking both sides about everything. We can't make that happen. Only you can make it happen. Like they made it happen in Libya to Gaddafi. Is that what you're talking about? You ghoul.
I mean, it's the same.
She knows exactly what she's saying. Mark Kelly knows exactly what they're saying. They are baiting people into violence. And I was just with the family of the victims of that violence. And I can tell you it's very real. You can pretend it's all a conspiracy or a stage play that didn't actually happen. You can pretend children aren't left, without fathers and wives without husbands and friends without their partner. But it's real. And this is sick what's going on. And she is a scary beyond Evita, like South American character who is getting endless applause, like standing ovations for calling for somebody to be gone. She didn't say he's left the presidency. She didn't say he has resigned or been impeached.
I know.
She said he's gone. In other words, dead. When I translated that sentence into Germany, it used the word for dead. It understood it to be dead.
Look,
and we're sitting here commenting on it like we're watching a fucking ball game. But
no,
the ball game is going to break out into the streets.
That's kind of the point. So she's a corporate lawyer who's never had who's never been in a situation where
his fellow corporate lawyer ended up dead in a park.
Right. I mean,
as soon as she became the president's, first lady.
It's all a game to too many of these people, and too many of these people. It's playing around with things that are ultimately irretrievable for ordinary Americans, like
absolutely irretrievable.
Stability, peace of mind, confidence in our leaders, like all kinds of things, right? And it's been almost 10 consecutive years of this stuff now, where
Matt, we're lucky we didn't have a World War III over this stuff, with the way they made Russia out to be the sort of secret leverage over Trump. Now it's Israel, but now he's carrying out the plot of another deep dark enemy, and they I understand that, but like on the other side of Thanksgiving, when I calm down and when I don't have ringing in my ears the description of what it's like to see your friend's head blown off at short range, and I get back in the spirit of, I don't know, it's all just a spectacle on social media, I'm going to say this. We're going to be lucky to get out of this. We're going to be very lucky because we're only going deeper. Last week, when we first talked about the sort of what Trump believes is the insurrectional or seditious comments, we didn't yet have Hillary Clinton conjuring up the idea of America as commanded by a national loudspeaker system, in which
no, it's like people of Earth,
the demise of leaders is announced, and vast applause breaks out among the prisoners or the, I don't know, comrades or whatever the group that she's talking about would be. It's getting worse. That wasn't the edge. That wasn't the precipice. Mark Kelly and Slotkin and Jake Sullivan's wife coming out and talking about some sort of murky reason that the mutinous military should maybe, because they were really threatening. They were saying, when we get power after the midterms and we find out you cooperated with this guy, you might be in trouble. That was what they were saying. I mean, I write for a living. I can read between the lines. It's not even that hard. These people aren't good writers. Saying gone isn't a mysterious word choice. You meant dead. And when you said do something about it, make it happen, we can't make it happen. Why can't you make it happen? You're one of the most powerful people in the world. I'm supposed to make it happen? What are you saying? How?
Yeah, and it's just
John David Hinckley style, make it happen?
It's carefully parsed, all this stuff, right? It's lawyered. Not even
carefully parsed. They're not
it's they think it's carefully parsed, and why do they feel empowered to or ennobled to think that? I mean, look what happened with the Comey case. They had their lawyers argue that Trump's choice of U.S. attorney to file the case was improper, and look, it's they successfully got the case dismissed. So even though there is, I think, fairly clearly an underlying offense in that case, they were able to successfully lawyer it away, right? In that case, and I still think these people, I think all of them, beginning with Russiagate, they were always in this mode that, this is our personal sandbox. We can do all these crazy things and everything's going to be fine in the end. But, it ends up not being fine in the end, right? Like what ends up happening is every stunt you pull where you use the levers of power of as in a way that it's not intended, it ends up beclowning the entire enterprise, and before eventually the whole thing's just going to break down, and it's just going to be a free-for-all. And these folks aren't going to know how to none of us are going to know how to handle it, right? Then it's the last thing any of us want, but they're all just playing in that direction rather than I just don't understand why they're not doing something else, more traditional politics, right? Like, I don't know, better policy.
I was just in a stadium in Phoenix, Arizona on Saturday night, the Giants Stadium. Most of the people there that filled this hockey arena were there to see the last night of the Megyn Kelly live tour. She'd had many guests, and she chose me for her last guest, along with Erica Kirk. But you see, at the time I said yes, Erica Kirk's husband was alive. Okay. At the time I said yes to this event on November 22nd, the day that Jack Kennedy was killed back in 1963, there was no fear of assassination. Okay. So this is very meaningful to me. It's very real. I said yes to a public event that wasn't one at which the idea of assassination was something you had to keep in mind. But it was 3 weeks after I said yes to it. And the night I actually did it just now, there were Blackwater security guards from an international, you might even call them mercenary force, people who you hire to stop yourself from getting killed on stage. They were very serious people, and I talked to them afterwards. There was no need for that before. Yeah, there was a need for it. It could have been better, maybe at Charlie Kirk's World, but it wasn't one where my wife was watching anxiously to see if violence broke out. I'm in that world now where I get up on a stage and my wife has to worry about me or someone else being shot. It's no longer funny. It's no longer funny about, we can't make it happen, maybe you can, Hillary says to the great crowd across the metaphorical megaphone that will tell us when the leader is dead, who's already had 2 assassination attempts. I'm not playing anymore, people. Like, you have got to either tone it down or face the consequences. Maybe you're going to escape. Maybe this whole game is one that you've got rigged, so you're going to never be prosecuted, never be called out, never face, the justice that you want so badly for others. But I sure hope I'm wrong. And if we don't back off, I don't know where we're going to be in January, let alone a year from now.
Yeah.
I'm scared. I'm scared. Not
No,
for myself.
I am too. Yeah. I mean, this has all the classic earmarks, right? Of certain situations. Yeah.
And on Thursday, we're supposed to have just our annual one afternoon of Detroit Lions cranberry sauce and, turkey relief from the whole
naps.
thing. And we're not even supposed to have that because they want to keep the pressure up, man. They don't want to let even a little bit of the steam out of this, over pressurized boiler that they hope and are saying from the stage will explode.
Yeah, I'm beginning to think it's not sustainable, that there's been a generation on the one hand of intense education about the fundamentally unsalvageable nature of the society in which we live, America as the great Satan, et cetera, et cetera. And it's odd because the country was jingoistic in the other direction, even just 20 years ago. But now we've moved in this other way where there's just a whole there's an enormous population of people who think this whole thing is not salvageable, the American experiment. And then there's another group of people who have who came to power because they had similar complaints, actually, but they were temporary. They were more temporary, right? Like they wanted America to go back to being something they remembered, right? And or to be more like a version of this country that was more functional.
It's not nostalgia to say when your house is on fire, I liked it better when it wasn't on fire, back when it wasn't on fire. That's not nostalgia, dude. That's called survival. That's called the survival instinct. I liked it better when I wasn't being shot at. That's not nostalgia. That's the desire for whatever you want to call it, normalcy, peace, love, civility. The day after the Megyn Kelly event, where the Blackwater people and the Australian intelligence agent who'd fought in Vietnam, who led the security force and was very serious about what was going on. See, he wasn't joking. He was hired because the threat was real and the landscape is real, and people are willing to pay his rates, more than happy, to seal off the possibility of future assassinations. The day after that, there was a football game in the same, what they call the Westgate Center in Glendale, Arizona, where the Phoenix Cardinals play. in the morning. America went from this very perilous night at which the widow of this guy who was assassinated on TV spoke, to a celebration of Sunday football, which we do every Sunday. I'm not sure that there's no hope for us. I think there is hope for us because we snap back to our best and good old dumb hot dog eating, football loving, tailgating,
It's
getting in the
actually
car
been a
with the
great,
family selves.
pretty good NFL season, actually, I would say.
Exactly. So we're not that far from the normalcy
Baseball's
they
back
want
up.
that they want us to, somehow see as forever departing in the rearview mirror. It's just that we haven't stood up for ourselves. We haven't really had a moment to go, you know what? We haven't changed as much as they tell us, and we're not as bad as they say. We're really not as awful, and we actually don't feel as guilty as they want us to. Let's just go to the game again. We're this close, actually, if we want it, but we're being talked out of it daily, and we're being told it can't even be grasped anymore. But the next day, that parking lot was full of people in costume, going to a game, coming in from all around, kids who'd never seen a football stadium, looking up at the State Farm Arena with stars in their eyes. We're still very near what we were or could be, but we have been almost brainwashed into thinking some veil of alienation and despair has dropped over us. Our instincts are still good. Our reflexes are still good.
This is something that has driven me nuts since the beginning of the quote-unquote populist movement era. The fundamental complaints on both sides of the populist movement, there are a lot of similarities between them. Trump used to talk about that overtly on stage. Bernie did talk about it after the 2016 election. It's not hard to see that the basic problem is that the people who are running the country they just need to be a little bit less greedy. They need to steal a little bit less. They need to make
They need to steal a lot less, in my view.
A lot less, probably, right? Okay, they need to make things a little bit less dysfunctional, less stupid, and
they need to stop pumping. They need to stop pumping psychologically and statistically tested hate strategies into the population at 24/7, such that they can't even smile without being told they're hurting someone else. They need to stop doing that too.
Right, and again, this is it wouldn't happen to a country that had to I don't know, like if this were 1943, you wouldn't have people dicking around with the kind of stupidity that we do in the media or in academia or any of this stuff. Like we couldn't afford it, right?
So true.
The kind of elective insanity that we've engaged in, I think largely to prevent two different groups of underclass voters from seeing what they have in common, has moved us closer and closer and closer with each passing year of this period to breakdown. And it's something
who wants the breakdown. It's not the people who are going to the Cardinals game on Sunday.
No, it's not.
The people who are selling them tacos al pastor. You know what? Everybody was getting along pretty well from what I saw. Here were the problems. It was too expensive. Getting your family out to that game and getting them into that stadium isn't as easy as it used to be. It's way too expensive. The food costs.
You can't take your kids. Yeah.
The traffic's bad. There's a lot of cops everywhere because there's like every once in a while gang shootings at the Westgate in Glendale, such that people warn me, watch your six, keep your head on a swivel, because every once in a while somebody comes running out, having a, war with their other, neighborhood gang or whatever. But none of those problems were irredeemable or unfixable. It's just that the people who at the top who say they want to fix them seem to be invested in making them worse. And I'm really puzzled as to why, but not really, because they make money off it. They've developed an inverse economy in which our suffering is their profit.
Yeah, it's true, actually, right? Like the only thing that keeps all of their sinecures in place is the dysfunctionality of the system. So they have to keep it as messed up as possible in order to keep from being cleaned out. Although I don't think that's going to last for too much longer. I mean, the one thing I think that's interesting about the Mamdani phenomenon is that it portends the end of the Democratic Party. The version that currently exists. They're not long for this world, I don't think.
No, they really aren't. Does anything seem more antique to you? Sorry, than like Chuck Schumer and Barack Obama? I mean,
and Nancy Pelosi
and so on. Going back to the Charlie Kirk business, I was talking about his views, and he's a misunderstood character. He wasn't some endlessly church-going guy, by the way. He kind of had his own ideas about Christianity. He sometimes went to Catholic church. He had a friend who's a seminarian named a guy from Frank, from North Carolina named Frank, who's a Christian apologist, meaning he studies the arguments to be made for Christianity. It was one of his best friends. He was traveling 6 days a week to college campuses. He was not settled in his way. He's a 30-year-old guy who was changing his mind, listening to people, and so on. When a guy like that is a subject for assassination, he was portrayed as some like foaming ideologue, but really he wasn't. He was more of an evangelical Republican. Over on the left,
and by the way, I would say less as someone who grew up watching the other versions of evangelicals in the 80s and 90s, and even was in an evangelical church. He was much more interesting and logical than those folks were.
Far more. And I heard stories, and I wasn't there with my reporter's hat on, so I'm not gonna tell them in detail. But my general impression was this guy who wanted a spiritual revival and sort of return to conservative values of various kinds, and set out to create this movement, succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. He got kicked off Fox News at a certain point, and his organization didn't know what to do because they'd been kind of relying on their access to Fox News in order to have a national profile. And I was told by one of his right-hand people, so we just decided to go on every podcast, talk to everyone who talked to us. We couldn't cruise along being on Rupert Murdoch's network anymore. And that's when things exploded. That's when we got big. That's when we started attracting millions and millions of views. When we started talking to everybody who talked to us and appearing in every place where they would let us appear. And it was in genuine terms a populist movement at that point, because they weren't depending on mainstream media to move their message. Now on the left, we see populism of another kind, but both kinds address essentially the same problems, which is lack of hope, lack of economic prospects, a sense of being crowded out of, what was called the American dream.
The one exception to that, I'll say, is that there's a little bit of excitement about the online economy on the other on the right that there isn't on the left, or there's a phony lack of on the left. Like there's an awful lot of entrepreneurial activity.
There's a lot of excitement about technology on the right. Okay, about the possibilities of these new communications, computing, and other tools. And frankly, that is a weakness for the left right now. They're not quite understanding that despite their attachment to a 19th century philosopher named Karl Marx and an earlier German philosopher named Hegel, and their vision of society as a sort of conflict based progression toward utopian equality, despite that, they're letting the other side determine the future because it's being forged in the laboratories and the offices and the quarters of what they revile as billionaires. So they're kind of letting go of the steering wheel on that, on that score. But and resentment will make you in a way miss opportunities that you would have otherwise. They might want to engage more with this stuff than they have. Not that I'm here to give advice to either side about how it should, increase its dominance or whatever. But I will say they aren't generally, except for these people who seem to want blood over cultural issues, addressing problems that are all that different than politicians have ever addressed.
Right.
Can things be more affordable? Can work be better paid? Can it be more secure? Can I sort of like relax from the total dog Hobbesian nightmare of fighting for every penny into some slightly more secure, especially when I'm old, or especially for the young and so on. And there are all kinds of arguments to be had over that. But the argument about whether or not we're sinful, evil, and deserve to somehow, I don't know, perish, that's one that I don't feel I have to engage in anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of the message, not the message. This is sort of my parting thought before we go off to Thanksgiving holiday, and we're not going to have a show on Friday, folks. We're enjoying the holiday. It is a holiday, so
I won't be eating, unlike you, Matt.
You'll be fasting, in accordance with your newfound ideology. No, I mean I think all these messages that are telling us that that it's hopeless and that the things have gotten so radicalized that there's no possible resolution. We're going to go away in a couple of days. We're going to meet reconnect with our relatives who have different opinions than from us, and it's going to be fine, right? And
you know what my real fear is? There's seriously that some people actually are buying this BS and aren't going to have that Thanksgiving, that they're going to opt out, or they're not going to be able to enjoy it, and they're not going to renew their ties to their family, and they're not going to play with their little nieces and nephews, and they're not going to be there for each other because they actually bought into this nonstop, oppressive, dispiriting demoralization campaign run by our country's wealthiest and most powerful people, which is really weird.
Right. So yeah, let's not fall for it. Let's just go off and have a good time this week.
So who are the Lions playing this year? Do they always play the same team? No.
Yeah, no. I mean, we always have Lions and Cowboys. Let's see who are the Lions playing. Lions this week. Oh yeah, Packers. Right. So yeah, and who the Cowboys playing? I'm actually not sure, folks. Who are the
Chiefs?
What are the Cowboys?
Oh, no, not the Chiefs.
Oh, it's the Chiefs
on Thanksgiving. The ones with headdresses. Oh no.
Hey, they played a good game yesterday, the Chiefs. So, dude, that was a hell of a game.
One last thing about my Saturday night. I went up on stage with Megyn Kelly, and she put on the screen in front of these 10,000 plus people a video of you and I walking through the airport in Milwaukee after Republican convention when we were harassed by a guy wearing a Green Bay Packers cheese head, okay? I exploded on him. I told him to get the
That was
F out of-
awesome. Yeah.
F out of my face. Megyn Kelly actually played it. Ha ha. Everybody laughed and saw Walter, really at his most Wolverine. Somebody said, I said I went full Wolverine, and somebody said, is there anything like half Wolverine? There isn't. Wolverines go all the way. Anyway, I had to have a joke about it to dismiss this, 10-foot high version of myself going after Cheesehead. And I said, he didn't realize I was a Vikings fan. Ha ha ha.
Right, right.
Well, the next day, the Packers beat the living daylights out of the inept and absolutely shameful shambles of a team called the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, the J.J. McCarthy-led Vikings. Yep. Uh-huh.
In one of the most depressing moments. But I called our producer and said they're going to show me defending Matt from the Cheesehead guy in the airport. And our producer said, oh man, okay. And then minutes later he said, I'm sitting in a sports bar and the TV across from our table just froze with an image of Green Bay Packers fans wearing cheeseheads. So what all that adds up to, I don't know.
Yeah.
But enjoy your football is what I'm saying.
Yeah, enjoy the football. It's a good season. This is a really good NFL season, and the NFL it's not going anywhere except unless we have to cancel it because it explodes the brains of its players. Like it's doing great.
Right.
Baseball's doing great. Basketball's got some issues, but anyway, watch your football this Thursday.
Okay.
Have a great holiday, everybody. And there'll be some interesting material coming up on Racket soon. And Walter and I will have a new book soon as well. We didn't pick a new one this week. We think we know what we're gonna do, but we haven't quite announced it yet. So
cheer the hell up, man.
I'm
lonely. My wife isn't with me. I spent the weekend with the friends of somebody who was killed. I'm in Las Vegas, and I'm going to go play the slots and have a good time and come back.
There you go. Yeah.
Mr. Sunshine. Sorry.
Take a couple of Ambien and just chill. So everybody have a good week. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you again soon.